Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of The Human Wheel. I'm your host, Yash, and co hosting with me is Rosh. Today, we have come to you with curiosity and excitement as we dive into an intriguing topic, the power of life story, connecting with your past to heal and consciously shape your present and future. In this thought provoking episode from season 1, Stories of Connection, we sit down with Sangita Kamath, a certified biography work trainer, counselor, and events transformational coach. She's also the founder of The Inner Space, an initiative dedicated to healing and supporting individuals, couples, parents, young adults, families of addicts, and various groups on their unique life journeys. Her latest project, The Shiro's Journey, empowers women above 35 to rediscover and embrace their true selves with joy and freedom.
Through today's conversation, we explore biography work, the art of reflecting on life stories to recognize challenges, celebrate achievements, and uncover patterns that shape our lives. By understanding our past, we gain deeper self awareness, strengthen our relationships, and create a more conscious and fulfilling future. Sangeeta's wisdom will inspire you to find the extraordinary in the ordinary and to foster deeper, more meaningful connections. Whether you are looking to enhance self awareness, build stronger bonds, or uncover unseen connections in your life, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Human Weave, Sangeeta. We're so excited to have you here.
Much Roshni and Yashasvi. I'm excited to be here.
Sangeeta, biography work is such a fascinating concept, and reflecting on our life stories to find meaning, patterns, and healing. We have been very curious after we spoke to you initially. Want to start with what inspired you to become a biography life coach? Can you share an important moment that led you to this path?
Sure. I think it was in my 40th year of my life. I'm 50, almost 54 now. So almost 14 years ago that I got introduced to this concept through the Waldorf education system. And it seemed like, okay, let me just explore this for myself as a tool of growth. And I just attended one workshop that was offered by my teacher, and I got just sucked into this magical world. And I realized that there is so much I don't know about myself and my life story. And I continued doing this work, and I enrolled for the 3 year training. And the whole idea was self transformation, getting to know myself. And as I've walked that path, I realized that this is something that is a magical transformative tool, and I must take it to more people. So thereby began my journey into this world.
This is awesome, like figuring out experience which you just encountered and spreading its impact to others. That's beautiful. So, what is the role of storytelling in your life when you speak about connections with people? So, any specific connections that you formed because of sharing or listening to these stories?
I think the most important connection was with myself. With every element of my life story, my life's experiences, I think I was really, really attracted to the work both of you do because of the name Human Weaves, right? So I felt that every element in the life story was weaving to produce this tapestry of who I am. And that in turn is weaving into the lives of other people around me, whether on a personal level, whether professionally, whatever. So it seems like it's such a huge tapestry which is interconnected yet, uniquely individual. So I think that's one of the most important connections to myself and through that to everybody else around.
That's a very interesting thing you talked about, weaving your stories with others, how they intertwine. That is really fascinating. Through your coaching work, this biography training work, have you come across places where you felt that other people's stories, when you were hearing it, you felt that is also me?
Oh my God, this is something that happens with every person I work with. Every person I work with. So I know, I mean, I am also a coach. So I know in coaching language, that you have to separate yourself from the client. And I think definitely I'm able to hold that boundary. However, there is something that happens in that space between me and the other person that I take away as something that I really need to ponder on, something I need to learn from in my personal life. And this is something that happens with every person I encounter, every person I encounter. And that is why I said that, weaving that is happening at every level. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the work you do, Sangita.
So, like you mentioned earlier, I'm right now focusing on women's transformation. However, my main area of expertise is biography work. For those who don't know much about this work, it is a reflective approach to your own life story. So, going back into your own life story in a very, very structured manner. It is not just, that you are only narrating the incidents of your life. First thing that you do is you go into the role of a witness. Though it is your own life story, you are going a little away from it, distance in terms of time, because you're looking at your past, so you already moved ahead and then you are turning back and looking at your story. And also you are going in with the understanding that here I'm a witness to this life story, right? So it's almost like when you're looking at that life story from the beginning, it is a huge number of elements here. Where am I born? Into what culture? Into what family? And why did I choose to be born here? And at this particular time in human development, from there on to what are the influences of the primary caregivers and everybody else around me. As the child's world expands, more and more people come in as influences, encounters, experiences not just of the people around, but also what we connect with the universe at a larger level, in terms of the planet, in terms of the archetype that I'm born with, right? So, planets I mentioned because that is part of my personality, right? And so you can see there are various elements that are coming from all different directions. And that is why I said it's weave. And I came here with a task, right? I'm born into this world with a task, and that is why I attract different people, different experiences into my life. And as I'm moving along, I'm collecting all these experiences. I'm encountering these people, something I read, something I hear, like the podcast that you have now. Somebody is listening to this, right? And everything forms a part of this weave. And I feel somewhere around the mid of our life, the biography, post 35, is when you realize, hold on, everybody is contributing, so many factors contributing to this weave, to this tapestry that I'm building. But now I want to really see what is my expression of this tapestry. So at this point, you start saying that, okay, this does not belong to me, or like, thank you so much for all your influences. I'm grateful. But now I'd like to see, who am I? What am I here for? So from that, weave of so many influences, you are still part of the weave, but it is like you want to express your colors. You want to express what you have as a message to the world, right? I might be wrong at times. I might not, the tapestry might not be as beautiful, but it is my creation. It is something that I want to express. And that is how the tapestry goes along. Yeah, multiple elements. And along the way, when you're looking back at your tapestry, you're able to see certain patterns that are emerging, certain common threads that, you're carrying through the tapestry, and discovering all that. And then, from a space of informed choice, deciding, okay, these are the weaves that I want to take forward. These are the weaves where I feel, okay, now this journey for this particular thread is coming to an end. I would like to leave it here and I would like to go ahead with new colors. So multiple elements that are coming in as we go along this journey of looking at our own biography.
Oh, that's powerful, Sangeeta. When you were saying about the external influences that shape your persona, and after a while you start reflecting about your own inner self, with you speaking to so many people with your work, what have you noticed? Where do people struggle the most to focus on their internal self?
I think it's conditioning from society, from family, that when you focus on yourself, you are labeled as selfish, self centered, right? So, somewhere the camera is always turned outward, capturing everything that's happening, in the outside world. And yes, at times we do connect to our own self, but somehow it doesn't feel right that I'm, focusing only on myself. So, there is a lot of conditioning that comes from society, from family, from culture. Yeah. So I think that is what really limits us from looking at ourselves, more often. And I think also, at least culturally in our society, women more than men in most cases are trained to look after others, nurture others. You don't speak up in front of your adults, you have to respect authority. So, all that forms a kind of narrative in your head that I will not be appreciated if I speak my truth, if I focus on what is it that I truly want, what is it that I desire. So I think that is the biggest block for us to actually look at ourselves more closely and be expressed in that.
And that is so interesting, right? Like when you mentioned that there are so many people that influence us and that becomes a part of our story. And at the same time, it's that larger voice, of the society or the culture that you belong to that also blocks you from your own story, like owning up your own story. So there is a paradox in that in a way. As a professionally trained person to do this, how do you break through those blocks in people?
Well, actually, I don't really have to do much because I think the human being is designed after a particular age to have inner voices speaking to them. Now it's a different matter whether we listen to it, whether we trust it or not. But there is this inner voice that keeps coming up. That's why I said this midlife, post 35 is my favorite period because if you truly listen, if you pay attention, then there is this inner voice which is leading you to say that, hey, stop. It's a beautiful tapestry that you have woven, but is this really yours and only yours, right? So I think this is something that every human being carries within himself or herself. So my job is actually very simple, to be able to tell them to go into selfie mode and say, hey, just leave out all the outer noise, everything else for now, just for now, and be with, be in the selfie mode, be with what is that voice say, what is coming up for you if everybody else was quiet, right? So I think at least people who come to me have come because there is something inside which has already started speaking and they want to make sense of it. So there is that spark which has already been lit. So I don't really have to do much except guide them to listen to their inner voice. And yeah, I think that's how it just, they start walking their own path.
So, what I'm understanding is the inner voice is always there, but it becomes a little more louder than before. And that is when people are motivated to go ahead and discover their own story.
So here I'd just like to add, the inner voice is there, but so that means there is a potentiality in every human being. Now, whether we really take up that opportunity and say, okay, let me listen to this voice, or whether I say, hush, stop it, I don't want to listen to you. And then that inner voice stops after some time, right? So I think there is a potentiality in each of us that we can really, really take charge of and, do our work.
I'm just curious, Sangita, why does the age then matter? Like you mentioned that after a certain age it becomes more stronger, right? I'm just curious if there is a potential in every person, what makes that age wisdom important in a way?
Yeah. So that's a beautiful question. So, in biography work, along with visiting your own life story, another thing that we do parallelly is look at the archetype of development of human consciousness. So, from birth until death, what is the archetype? Very fascinating. Each of us, like a snowflake, has a unique life story, a unique biography. And yet, all of us are connected by the archetype of the human development. So, very, very briefly, let me explain to you. It's about the first half of our life. So, just randomly, we choose, taking an average lifespan, we choose it at around 35. The first half is about, it's almost like you're taking one deep breath in, right? So, first half is all taking in, trying to figure out. And then post 35 is the time to exhale and express whatever you have taken in, you have made your own, and now you're expressing it out into the world. So that is why the significance of 35. So it doesn't mean it's exactly on your 35th birthday this is going to happen. But 35th year, from 35 onwards, it's the decline of the physical body, right? We know that from a lot of cases of sportsmen, athletes who retire, 31, 32, 33, because they can see that their body is now not able to do what it was earlier. So there is a decline of the physical body, and the forces which are being freed up from that are available to us for, if I may use the word, for spiritual work. Right? So, spiritual does not have to be religious or to do with any kind of cult. It is me connecting to my higher self, me connecting to what did I come here to do before I pass on from this world. What am I going to do? So, somewhere beyond 35 is when all these slowly start coming up as questions. So, that's why the significance of that 35 and beyond.
So I'm curious for our listeners how they can tap this inner voice so it exists inside them. How can they really tap into it and not really wait until it's in the bottleneck for them to explore?
So I like to use the metaphor of our life as a river, and we are flowing in this river. We have multiple things that we need to be conscious of while we are in the river. Like I have to stay afloat. I have to look at what's coming, in front of me from the sides, everything, right? So I am so engaged in this. I'm so busy with this that I do not have the time to stop and contemplate and reflect. So, practices such as biography work, or I'm sure many other practices like meditation and even coaching or whatever, is like you stepping out of the river for some time. You're stepping onto the banks, and because you are not focused or engaged in trying to stay afloat and survive, you have the space to look at what's happening, to look at the context, to look at the river from a witness perspective, from a 360-degree view. So it is not just, with blinkers on that this is the truth or this is reality, but when you rise up like a bird's eye view, right? So then you are able to see lot of other things around, and that makes sense, right? So I think uh, a wonderful way is to step out of your everyday life. It doesn't mean you go into the Himalayas or go into a cave and meditate. It means, whenever there is a possibility, or even making it a practice to keep time, some time aside for practices like this, or you, even doing biography work is, of course, a practice like this because you step out of your life and you're, doing this, or something as simple as every morning or every night before you go to sleep, right? A lot of us do this at the end of the year, right? We're looking back at the year and saying, oh, okay, I didn't do this. Okay, I need next year, I'm going to do this, right? So that's what we're doing, right? So reflective practices, which if it can become, a regular practice, then very slowly it becomes a faculty that you develop. Then even when you are swimming in the river, while you're swimming, you are still able to do it, right? Like sometimes we are on the phone and we are cooking, or when we are driving was a good example, right? Initially, when we are learning, we are like petrified. How am I going to do so many things? Change the gear, steer, look out of, car, and so many things. And as we become good at it, we are singing along with the music, we are talking to the people, and we don't even realize that I'm actually doing all those things together. So I think when you start focusing on your inner voice and giving it importance and really nurturing it, then it becomes louder, it becomes like a friend, and then you have a friend or faculty for life.
Yeah, the word that just stuck when you were saying about witnessing was pause. Pause and reflect and see your own self doing what you're doing without experiencing it, without no action, just witness and see. And seeing it as bird's eye view is like having that whole bigger picture in front of you and seeing what is working out and what is not. I think in that pause, we can really listen to our inner voice and acknowledge it and appreciate it so that it becomes louder than not really suppressing it without giving that moment of pause to it.
That image is so strong of your life being a river and you're flowing with it and then you just step out. I think that is something that will stay with me personally, when I'm thinking about this whole process. Like Yash said, it feels like, you're pausing to not just look at life the way you have looked at so far, but coming out, and when you said that bird's eye view, looking at it from different perspectives, right? And that is very interesting because generally we have a very strong perception about who we are and how our life has been, how people have victimized us. We have never done that to others and those kind of things, right? But when you do that, when you remove yourself from that flow and look at it, it does feel like a very different story altogether. I wanted to ask you, what do the words vulnerability and honesty mean when you are unwrapping your story?
So I guess the starting point is vulnerability, because especially if you are exploring this with another human being, all right? Because it makes no sense if you are not going to be able to embrace that vulnerability to even start any of these kinds of practices. Because of course, again, that's very relative, because I could be vulnerable on a scale of 1 to 10. I could be initially vulnerable only about going up to 3 or 4, because I'm coming from anxiety, I'm coming from fear of how this vulnerability is going to be accepted. How is somebody else going to be responding to it? As you open up, as you become more vulnerable, I think you realize that everybody else is, grappling with the same challenges, the same concerns, same issues. Like I said, though we might have, like, polar opposite stories, life stories, our archetype is the same. So as we go along, I also like to say that, you go into selfie mode, and yet at the same time, you keep moving your camera between yourself and the others. So when you're looking at the other, you realize that they're going through something similar or something worse, and I'm not alone in this. So I can be vulnerable. I think it's very, very important, especially if, they're working with a professional or somebody who is trained, for the coach or the person to actually build this space where the, client is able to share the vulnerability. So I feel, it's two way. It's not just for the person to be vulnerable and feel that, okay, it's safe to be vulnerable, but for
Yeah.
anybody else who's listening to the story or holding space for another person to be able to have that human connect, that it's okay to be vulnerable. And I think, and then it moves on to honesty. If I feel that I can be vulnerable, if I feel that this is a safe space, it is a space which is non judgmental, then I can be as honest as I want to. But the biggest challenge I feel is for us to be vulnerable and honest with ourselves, right? A lot of times, we don't want to look at, things which we feel are negative aspects, or, that I did something wrong there, or I could have done it differently, taking on blame for that. But I say it's more of taking on responsibility, because the moment I own it and I said, yes, I made a mistake here, then there is a possibility of me correcting that mistake. But if I deny it and I say, no, I did not make a mistake in that relationship, then there's nothing I can work on. So I feel the biggest challenge would be to honest and vulnerable with ourselves.
It's beautiful to envision the two-way process, even as a worker, as well as the person who was sharing their life story with the biography worker. How does this connection of storytelling with vulnerability help in healing and enhancement of personal growth, both for the trainer as well as the person who's sharing their story?
Yeah. So let me start with the person who's sharing, the story. Just the process of revisiting your life story and looking at every element involved, but as a witness, like I said, not going through all the emotions. Of course, we are humans, so we are going to experience the emotions, but it's from a distance. And again, I'm looking at the 360-degree view, the bird's eye view. So it takes me out of just I, me, and myself. I'm able to also see the view that, let's say we have some issues with, a particular person in our family. Let's take mother, So I walk through my entire life blaming my mother for what she did or what she didn't do. And I say, I'm like this. My life is like this because of what she did, right? And when we look at that 360-degree view, we are able to see, what was the situation, what were the dynamics for her in her life. And that brings in an understanding of, okay, this is why she did what she did. And there is also, as we go along that whole process, there is a healing, right? Because I'm making sense now of what happened there. And I'm making sense of it as an adult, right? So a lot of faculties have developed, and I'm able to now see it also from a distance. So there is a healing that happens. And the other thing that happens is, like I said, we are doing it parallelly with the archetype of the human development, right? Of development of human consciousness. So it makes me feel that I'm not alone, right? Like, okay, this is supposed to happen at this time, right? Like one example I'd like to give, which is happening, quite openly nowadays, is when we talk about menopause, right? So imagine if I didn't know about menopause and I went through the symptoms and I struggle with it and I question what's wrong with me. But now, because I know about menopause, because I know that there are so many symptoms that could come up as a result of it, I feel like, okay, this is a normative process of being a human being, of being a woman. So it's very settling. I'm not going into panic mode or blaming myself for saying something is wrong with me. So that is second part. And the third part is I'm able to make sense of all the experiences, look at them, and in freedom decide that yes, this has influenced me. This is a part of my life story. Now going forward, do I choose to carry this with me? Do I say, no, this does not serve me anymore, so I'm going to put it aside and not carry as a baggage? Or does it look like, okay, this seems like something I can polish and transform and take along. I don't want to take it in the same, shape that it is in or whatever form it is in, but it looks like there is some value in it. So I'm going to take it along. So we call this as co-creating your future, because you're not just going with the flow and wherever life is taking you. You are becoming a co-creator. You're becoming an active participant. So there are transformations and changes and healing at every level that is happening.
Wow. That is really a stunning, feeling when you're talking about this. I'm just curious when you say that, people don't feel alone anymore when they share. They know that there are experiences that are shared. In your work, what are some common themes that have come up, emerged as you have worked with different people?
The most common is, uh, looking at placing the blame, on our childhood, on our parents, or on our heredity, or somewhere in the past. So that is something that comes big time. There is resentment or anger against certain people, or just for being born in that family or in this country or whatever it is. That is one very common theme. And second is the changes that are happening within at different levels, different phases in life, right? Like, let's say, there are a very, very significant developmental milestones, like age 3. We call them the terrible twos and terrible threes, when the child says no to everything. But understanding that this is the first time the child is saying, I am separate from you and I have my own independent choices and I'm going to start exerting it. Right. So similarly, this happened at various, significant points in our life. Age 9, age 12, age 18, age 25, 28, 35, and so on. So getting to know that makes us feel like, okay, I'm on the right path. It's almost like signboards, and we feel that, yes, this is something that it's not a problem with me. Because when parents get to know that, at age 2 and 3 this is a normal, development, then they feel, okay, nice. Otherwise they're like, what's wrong with my child? Something wrong with me, I'm not parenting well. So that getting to know that I'm not alone and that this is part of the archetype settles things down for you, and then also you feel more confident about facing it.
So, with your example of camera, we're always having that camera turned towards others and not really look at our own self. We're always finding some elements to blame it on and not really own it, taking that responsibility on the self. So, somebody who feels the experiences they might have had in their childhood or in their life so far feel that it's not significant enough to even have focus on themselves. So the camera is not really turned towards themselves because they don't feel it's valuable enough to acknowledge and just turn those cameras to always the outside world.
So one of the ways of doing that would be biography work, because you get empowered to really understand that I have it within me. It's the power. Yes, until now, I might have given it to others around me. And if I feel that going forward, I want to bring about a shift, then there is no other way than to, focus on myself. So I'll just give you one very interesting example of one of the participants. So she came from a small town, from a very conservative family, and the only child of two doting parents. She was pampered, yet at the same time, always told that you're a good girl, you need to listen to everybody, you need to respect people around you, and, things like that. And she enjoyed that and she felt, wow, this is good for me. Right. And then she got married and she underwent physical abuse, emotional abuse. And this went on for years, almost 2 decades. Okay. And she did not know that she could get out of this, that she could do something about it, because it was hammered into her, and her personality being such that she was a very soft person, very emotional, and so very sensitive. So for her, uh, rebelling or doing anything against that conditioning that was hammered into her was not even a thought or a possibility. And she didn't though she worked with her husband, she didn't have her own bank account, and there was nothing that she could say is mine. Okay. And then around her 40th year, she came to me first for a session, and then we spoke about this, and I said, why don't you just come for the workshop instead of doing individual sessions? She came for the workshop, and when she heard the stories of the other women, and we go into groups and discuss our stories and things like that, what started happening was there was a magical transformation in those 4 days. I mean, I myself was shocked that within from the first day to the last day, what happened was, we draw the river of life as an artistic activity, and we draw the whole river, and then we leave some place for our envisioned future. And everybody, I said, okay, last day today, let's finish our river of life, and then we'll talk about it. And when I walked by her table, I said, you're not drawn the rest of the river? She said, I've drawn it. I said, where is it? She turned the page over, and she said, I don't want to continue on the same page. I'm going to turn the page over. I'm going to start a new river. And that was so powerful. And it was not just in the river, the artistic activity. I have been in touch with her, and in the next 3 months, actual flip over that she did with her life. She's still in that marriage, but she does not allow herself to be abused. She has claimed her place in the business that she's doing with her husband. Plus, she has started activities of her own, which are her passion, something that fulfills her. And I mean, it's amazing. So, it's the resource is within us. So, you sometimes you don't know it is there within you, and all you need is somebody else to tell you. So I mean, I might have been a very small part of it. All the other participants who were there and talking about their stories, and their they were sharing all that was happening with them and all that they wanted to do, that just flipped the story for her. So I guess, yeah, it's there within you. Just you need somebody to spark it, or you yourself can spark.
That's a profound example, I think, Sangeeta, because that reminded me of a quote. There might be some sad moments or sad days in your life. Just flip the day or flip that sad page in that book of your life, and you can always have a fresh start. That's very beautiful. I'm going to take that with me. If you don't like the situation you're in, you can just always have that flip. You need not really stay with that.
And for you, it must have been such a beautiful moment witnessing it, right?
Absolutely. I was surprised that, I mean, of course, I've seen transformations happening, but they are slow and gradual. And for me, the shift from the first day to the fourth day, and I mean, I was like, wow, I've never seen. I mean, people, extend their river, they make it beautiful, they make it grand, everything. But saying, I don't even want to be on this page. I will, start my river all over again. And that was like, oh my God. I was like, really, it was magical for me. Yes. And I felt so much gratitude to, be a part of that. Like, oh my God, I'm witnessing this.
And to anybody who is hearing this, also, that is so much of hope, the story that you shared with us, that any situation that they are in, there is always a possibility to start over again, draw a new river. And I think that that is something important to take back, reflect on. The story was so powerful. I want to ask you, could you share another example from your work where you saw somebody rediscover a relationship or connection after connecting with their own story?
Yeah, definitely. So, in the recent past, I have been working with a client, and he had been struggling with his relationship with his spouse because due to what had happened in the early part of his childhood, there was a lot of authority wound because his father was like, extremely a military style person, very disciplinarian. And, that this person, he was a very sensitive child and somebody who could have maybe more of his feminine side expressed. And, that was constantly shut down, that you can't sit and talk and gossip. You cannot be talking, discussing things like a woman. You have to be strong. You have to be like a man, whatever his father's image of a man was. And, that became so much a part of him that when he started getting into relationships with women, he would find that he likes that person, but he has this wall around him where he feels that I cannot, let this person know the true me, nor can I express myself fully because I have to be the man in this relationship. And that hugely impacted his marriage. And then, as a result of that, also his relationships with his children and other people in his life. I don't know, something he read somewhere triggered that in him, that hey, I'm not this person, and somehow I'm not feeling comfortable in who I am right now. And that's when he came and we worked together. And for him, it was very, very freeing to get in touch with his own core, not what his father wanted him or what you know people around him wanted to be, because that was a persona he had carried for decades. And somehow he felt there was misalignment between who he was being and who he really is. So when we worked through that, he got in touch with this part of himself which loved sitting and talking about intimate things, sharing stories, really, really connecting deeply with people. And he felt, oh my God, I missed out on so many deep connections because of this persona that I have built and that I am carrying. That, of course, it didn't happen. This was just the realization, it was an awareness. But he felt vulnerable and honest enough to speak about it with me and also share this with his wife. And he started working on it. And, I haven't I mean, we haven't reached the end of the road, but he's on a journey where he's aware that this is my true self and this is how I'm going to be in the future. I don't care what my father thinks of me. I don't care what society says I should be. I'm going to be very authentic. And that has hugely shifted his relationship. Of course, we can't erase the past, but in the present and going forward, he's really, by leaps and bounds, he's really flourishing in that relationship.
That that power of empowering yourself through your own story, right? um to So there was that part of him which existed in his childhood which he had suppressed, and then to find it again and say that this is how I want to be in the future just makes me think. I know you mentioned the importance of the age when we are talking about working with life stories, but I'm just curious here. How does it work to, let's say, work with late teenagers or somebody in their early teens with this so that they can be empowered in this way quite early in life? Is that
Oh my
possible?
God. Oh my God. This is something I wish we had as part of a curriculum, maybe in colleges, I don't know, life skills classes, something, because being aware, it's like I go into a forest, and if I don't know where I am, if the orientation is not there, then I can get lost. But if I know that, okay, this tree, is where I have started and where I'm going, and I see things which I recognize and I become aware of, then the whole journey becomes so much more joyful. It doesn't have anxiety in it, so much freedom. So I feel it is something that the adults definitely first need to know about it, because I, have clients who are children, who are in their late teens or young adults, and their biggest challenge is the adults around us don't understand us. So, first, of course, the adults, but yes, if we can catch them young and educate them about, their life journey. I mean, what's more important than my life story? Everything else comes later. This is the most precious part of me. So, definitely, it would be wonderful to somewhere start with younger people, bring this to them. It can be so empowering and so freeing, I feel. Yes.
I can totally relate, me being in late 20s now. I totally resonate with you when you say you have to bring it to adults so that they can empower teenagers and young adults. Because every time, at least personally, what I've heard from my parents or my elders is always like, we have been through that. So they try to force it on us because they've gone through it, even if it's in the wrong way, rather than empowering us to look at in our own perspectives or supporting in our own perspectives. It is more of, we have done it this way, you have to do it this way.
Sorry, Yashaswini, I want to tell you something. When you said that we have been through this, we have not been through this. One, your journey is unique. Two, looking at evolution and the development of human consciousness, which is really going very fast. How can I know I'm in my 50s? I'm like more than 2 decades, ahead of you. Ahead means behind, if you see, in terms of, development, I'm behind you. So how can I know? I don't know. I don't know. So this is what I feel every adult should embrace, that what the youngsters are presenting, I don't understand. Like, would I have understood if somebody spoke to me about internet and Zoom and, you know, Wi-Fi and things like that? Then no. But now little children know about it. So actually, I would say I'm backward by decades from the youngsters. So I think every adult has to become aware that rather than me saying learn from me, yes, I agree that I have more experience. I can share my experiences with you. But it has to be, I want to learn from you because you have got the latest taza khabar. Mine is stale news. So I don't agree with that thing that I have been there. I have not been, in my late 20s when it was time of all this, of Corona and internet and Wi-Fi connectivity and 4G, 5G, 6G, iPhone, Instagram. All that wasn't there when I was in my late 20s. So I haven't been there.
And the growth is also very exponential because when you were saying about the generations, just like 2, 3 years younger to me are so much pro in the technical skills in the eras. They're born with the AI and all other technical advancements, which was not the case while I was in my childhood. We were always outside playing, so that makes sense, a lot of sense. What comes to me is more of acceptance that every other life story is different. It's not that as an adult we know it all.
It also brings to me that it's important to not just look at your own story from a bird's eye view, but also other people's story from a bird's eye view.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you get into bird's eye view, that is the beauty. You're not only looking at yourself, you're actually able to see what's happening around other people as well. So, so that makes sense. So I'm not denying that if I had, troublesome, challenging experiences as a child, I'm not denying that they were troublesome to me. I embrace that. Yes, as a child, I felt this, I felt that. But rather than being stuck in that and feeling stuck in that, can I say, okay, what is it that I can harvest from this? What did it build in me as a muscle? What are some of my strengths as a result of that? And how can I tap into that going forward?
We live in a time where storytelling is come back into life in a way, where people are talking about storytelling being so important in corporates, in our personal lives, with children. What is it about stories that attract people so much?
I think because, like I said, that in every story, there is a part that you personally resonate with, even though it might be a completely different story. There is some part in it which, because, that's why I said I love this name, the human weaves, that, we are very, very individual, and our consciousness as we go forward is growing towards becoming more and more individual as we see. And yet we are woven together. So there is, whatever you share, there is some part of me which is being touched, and something it is evoking in me. It might not be the exact same event, or incident, but something about it is, moving something, shifting something in me. And then that's why, so much of interest in listening to other people's stories. And yeah, just, I think it's beautiful. The more you listen to people, it's like, wow. I mean, some part of it, I think something moves and you resonate with some part of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. It just comes to me. I would like to share this. Recently, I read about a school where the founder of the school had actually, when she was 12, read about a Japanese teacher who used to teach the children inside a train cabin while the World War was going on. And the children were learning inside that cabin without realizing there's a war that's happening outside. And the teacher just went on teaching. And this girl who read this book, she was so inspired by it that as she grew up, she started her own school and in an auction got a train coach and turned that into a library in the school. And when you were talking about this, I was thinking of that, you know, a story that probably happened decades ago has the power to influence you to do something with your own life. And that in turn can touch so many other lives, right? Like even the story you shared about this lady who, flipped free. I'm sure it can go on to touch so many lives.
Yes, yes, it is going on because I told you she has started something which is a women's cooperative. And so, not just being part of the family business, she has started something where she felt like if I am empowered, I need to empower more women. And, though it's a cooperative which might be dealing with, tangible material stuff, what she's doing is she's transforming their lives. And then they in turn are transforming, so many other lives. So, yeah, definitely the power of stories.
Sangita, if you could pick up a real or a fictional character and if you could imagine their past and present, whose connections deeply inspire you and you would like to kind of work with their life story?
So I had just written about this somewhere. I'm very, very connected to Alice in Wonderland because she just fell down the rabbit hole. And then, doorways, the potions, all that opened up, such magical worlds to her. And all that, she took with her was curiosity, right? Like, okay, let me just see, check this out. Okay, this door opens. Okay, let me open it. Okay, what is this potion? Let me drink it and see where it's leading me. So, for me, I very, very deeply believe in the power of trust, of faith, as I would call it. I take one step and then I know that, that's enough. The path is going to open up. I don't have to worry about, oh, 20 years down the line, where am I going to be, whatever. Right now, what do I need to do? And even that, I feel I'm being guided by something, whether it's my inner voice, whether it's, something outside, I don't know. But it tells me, okay, take this path if there's a fork. And if I trust, if I let go of, you know many things which would limit me, I feel, yeah. So Alice in Wonderland, definitely.
Yeah. That's a story that's made so many of us dream about something fantastical like that. That magic of curiosity, what it can bring to you. Do you think there is a possibility of working with life stories to create a very powerful shared sense of humanity?
So I guess so there is working with the individual, then there is working with groups, right? So if we expand it into having these as bigger spaces, so definitely there is a possibility. I mean, why not? Right? Because I personally have experienced the power of the group and how the facilitator is actually just a fly on the wall. Okay, it's how the group energies, what they're learning from each other, the peer learning, the inspiration from each other. So definitely we could, look at building communities, right? And then these communities in turn, going out into bigger communities and doing this, of course. Yeah, these could be shared experiences, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious of how that would turn out, with what you have experienced. And yeah, I can see it when you're saying that, how larger communities and even community stories for that, if you take communities as individuals, right? Like their stories. And we have experienced those at some points, or even history, I think is something that now when I think of it, it is something that affects the shared humanity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you talk about community, each community by itself has its biography, right? Like it's born at a certain point. There is a gestation period when it's only ideas, and then they come together in the physical, and then, it's in the nascent infant stage, and then slowly they're growing together and becoming, stronger and becoming more. Then there is a fallout, right? Some people leave and then more people join in. So definitely, biographies of bigger spaces as well.
And that also, when you distance yourself from it and look at it, there is so much more richness that you can add to that story.
Yeah, yeah.
You might have listened to thousands of stories. What one thing that has really made, like, wow, this is something that I've learned from this story that has deeply impacted you with all the stories that you've listened to for your own personal life?
I think this story that I shared of this woman who actually flipped her story around, I think that has been very, very inspiring for me because, knowing who she was before and who she is now, right? So if that can happen, then anything can happen, kind of thing. So her story personally has really, really inspired me, and it feels like, oh, if she can do it, I can definitely do it. Because I mean, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal or above, but because I didn't have that kind of conservative upbringing and all that to deal with, and despite all that, she is where she is today. So for me, it's like, wow, I can do it too. Or anybody else I work with, I feel like you can do it definitely.
Sangeeta, coming to the close of this episode, I wanted to ask you if you could leave our listeners with one key message about the power of life stories. What would that be?
Uh, I think I'd like to read a quote by Carl Jung. The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. So let me repeat this. The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. So my message to all the listeners is, focus on knowing who you are.
Very, very powerful, Sangeeta. Thank you for this very interesting conversation. It's been enriching to explore the power of life stories, and we are quite sure that this conversation will help so many listeners to start thinking about their life stories and doing biography work, probably with such wonderful trainers like you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about biography work and human stories. So,
Can see your passion for it. Yeah, absolutely see your passion for it.
Yeah, yeah, very. Dear listeners, if you've been listening to this episode, I hope this sparked inspiration and encouraged you see your own story through a fresh lens. Remember that your story is uniquely yours, beautiful, complex, and worth celebrating. As you reflect, may you rediscover a vibrant version of yourself, someone who embraces their journey with confidence and steps into the spotlight with pride. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll leave you with some reflective questions to take a step back and witness your own story and witness it boldly. First, I would like you to pause and think about a defining moment in your life. How has it shaped who you are today? Second, listening is a very powerful tool. I want you to ask you, has listening to other stories helped you understand yourself or the world around you better? Have you ever shared a part of your life story with someone and felt a deep connection as a result? And what was that experience like?
We hope these guiding questions help you connect, reflect, and evolve in your journey. Thank you so much, Sangita, for this truly eye opening and inspiring session of self discovery through storytelling. It's been an absolute privilege to spend the last hour with you, learning from your wisdom and reflecting on the power of life stories. We are deeply grateful for your time, insights, and the profound impact you bring to this work. Next week, we'll be back with another inspiring episode featuring Julia Chandrasekharan, a mother of four, two born to her biologically and two through adoption. Together, we'll explore parenting through birth and adoption and what it truly means to connect deeply with your child through love, understanding, and resilience. Don't forget to subscribe and tune into The Human Weave. Until then, it's goodbye from your host, Yash and Rosh. Stay connected, stay curious.